Welcome to the Bottom Line. I'm Pastor Rick Utze from Maranatha in Plain City, Ohio. You know, as we go through difficult times and crises and the COVID-19 pandemic that we're seeing not only in our country, in our communities, but across the world, I think sometimes we wonder, what good does prayer do? And sometimes we as Christians get mocked during these times for saying, well, if you had a God who would listen and answer, why do you have to go through this? Like, what good is it doing in your lives anyway? So what is the purpose of prayer? And I had to think about that because I think sometimes we as well-meaning Christians sometimes look at prayer kind of like we do a vending machine. Like, you go up to a vending machine, you pick out all your options, and there's things in there, and there's good things, and I'll look and I'll say, oh, you know what, I love peanut M&Ms. I'm going to put in my $1 or whatever it costs now for a vending machine, and I'm going to hit B12, and I expect the peanut M&Ms to drop to the bottom, and I can get them right away, right? And all of a sudden, we think that's kind of how prayer is. Like, is that how prayer works? Like, can we go to God and say, hey, God, hey, here's what I think I want and what I need, and so if I do this, and so I say my prayer and I do this and I'm obedient to you, then I ought to get this, right? I ought to have this hope and desire fulfilled. And I got to thinking about that. Wait a minute. Our job in prayer is not to master the Master. It's not to master the Holy Spirit or the Father or Jesus the Son. It's to get our will in tune with His will, right? And we don't often know what's best for our lives. And we look at what's going on around us and we think, how could this be best? But God's still on His throne. He's still in it. And I think James 4:13-17, as I read these verses again the other day, I'm thinking how pertinent this is for our lives, for humankind. It says in verse 13, come now, you who say, today or tomorrow we will travel to such and such a city and spend a year there and do business and make a profit. So there's this idea that, hey, we probably had plans for today, tomorrow, next week, next month. There were things in our lives, business-wise and personal-wise and vacation-wise, and all these things that were supposed to happen. And many of those things, right, bam, changed in an instant. And people aren't traveling. People are losing their jobs. People are not able to go on vacations. People are staying at home. People are getting stir crazy. All these things are just happening in our lives. And it says, yet you do not know what tomorrow will bring, what your life will be. Like, who knew 3 months ago that all sports would be cut off and all these things I just mentioned would be happening in our lives? It says you are like a vapor that appears for a little while then vanishes. Just setting our lives in perspective. We need to have wisdom and know what true life is. It goes on and says, instead you should say, if the Lord wills. Like, our whole life is based on the Lord's will. We should want, the one thing we should want is His will done for our lives and the lives of the people around us. It says, if the Lord wills, we will live and do this or that. But as it is, you boast in your arrogance. I think God is like cutting a lot of us off at our knees, saying we aren't nearly as significant as we thought we were. All such boasting is evil, so it is sin to know the good and yet not do it. And so there's plenty, by the way, there's plenty of good I'm seeing in our world today. People are rallying together, helping those in need. I see it in our communities. You see it on social media. You see it on the news. Like, yes, there's bad things, but God's also doing good things through people. And we're going to look back at this and say, and I believe this with all my heart because God is still on the throne, that we are going to be better off as people and in our communities because of what God is doing to change not just the world, but our lives, our hearts for Him. And so I want you to know the Holy Spirit who intercedes for us according to the will of the Father, as Romans 8 says. Our Holy Spirit is, get this, He's a down payment for our home in heaven. He's our comforter, our healer, our assurance, our power, our intercessor, our guide, wisdom through the Word. He's our helper through difficulties. He raises your mortal bodies to new life. How do you like that? Like, we have great power in the Holy Spirit according to God's will and His way. And so here's the bottom line. You know, we're reminded by the events of COVID-19 that we don't know what tomorrow brings, but God does. You may think that you need those peanut M&Ms out of the vending machine, when God knows that you need something more healthy for your soul. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time on The Bottom Line.